Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ultimate Reaper, the UIM series where every monster in Gilenor is locked until I'm randomly assigned to harvest its soul. After finally killing the cave goblin last episode, I'm headed to Relica to kill a bunny. That means I'm gonna need to run through White Wolf Mountain, which, you know. No. No, Big Wolf, no, oh, no. I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, it turns out it's no big deal with 10 wines to chug. But after a long walk, that's the bunny down. Just like that. Easy peasy. Next, I lucked out and was assigned a fox, which happened to be right next to the bunnies. Unfortunately, the fox also totally kicked my ass. So I decided to do a little bit of training at the bunnies nearby, since they were now unlocked, and got myself up to 5 strength. It did not help. At all. Fortunately, I did have enough casts of Airstrike left in my inventory to kind of cheese the fox, which turned out to be an incredibly humbling experience. Next up we got a jackal, so need to go to the desert for the first time. Headed back to Lumbridge, stopped at Shanty Pass to pick up a couple water skins, and then I flew to the totally wrong part of the desert and got killed by the bandits at the bandit camp, who apparently aggro you if you're carrying Silverlight. That's not in the wiki. I went ahead and just wind struck the jackal down from behind a cactus, and getting a ghost means I finally have a good reason to go back to Varrock and load back up on runes. Unfortunately, I did not think to buy a staff first, so I wasted a ton of money on air runes before going and finally buying an air staff at Zaf's. After I got my staff, I just hopped on down into the sewers and got my ghost. A very easy kill with Fire Strike. With the ghost down, I went ahead and got my next task, and unfortunately Varrock is a bit of a sausage party, but I did eventually find a woman here in the pub and just murdered her to death. Next up, I had to kill a Black Knight, and luckily again, very close by in Varrock, so I just safe spotted him while his friend watched. Easy. Now we unlocked the Chompy, which means we're going to be doing our second quest of the account, Big Chompy Bird Hunter, so we need 5 fletching, 30 cooking, and 30 ranged. I decided I didn't want to train woodcutting just yet, because it would take a while and I didn't even have an axe, so I hopped on over to the sawmill, which was right next door, and just picked up some normal logs and fletched that way. It was actually a really fast method, and got 5 fletching in like 10 minutes. Next up I decided to train cooking, and actually stole an idea from Generate Tasks. I think his first video, he has to do the same quest, and he goes to the Grand Gnome Village tree place, this place. What you do is just buy the Johnny's dill from the store, stick it in a tin, and cook it for about the same experience as you'd get doing beef in Lumbridge, with a way lower burn rate. Unfortunately, I blew all my money buying tins from the store before realizing that you could get them for free from the cabinet. So I went ahead and took a quick look through my list of unlocked monsters and realized that there was really nothing in the area I could use to make any money. So I had to get out of there, unfortunately, and decided that I'd start training range right away, as well as some other useful early game skills like thieving for money and agility to finally get some run recharge. And while all that training is going on at 10 times speed in the background, I wanted to talk about some of the exceptions that are baked into the sheet and how I actually made this sheet. I started by taking the entire old school RuneScape bestiary and sticking it directly into the sheet, and wound up with almost 1900 entries. But if you actually look at the bestiary, you'll see that a lot of the entries are just redundant monsters with a link to the exact same wiki page. For example, there's 30 different entries for zombie pirates that you encounter only on Brain Death Island, and there were a lot of different examples like this, like the barbarians in Barbarian Village, all of the citizens in Miscellanea and Etceteria, the citizens of Canifis, where they're really just the same mob, copy and pasted with some slightly different attribute. So I grouped all those exemptions into a category of superficial variation. These are all common monsters that usually share a basic model, but have slight differences like level, color, location, or even name. But they really don't have any kind of meaningful distinction that make them interesting, useful, challenging, or even fun to kill. So I left one of each type, and when I receive that, it'll unlock the rest. So for example, Zombie Pirate still appears on the sheet, and when I get that, then I can kill all 30 Zombie Pirates, even though they have different wiki entries. And thank God, I just can't wait to unlock all those Zombie Pirates. I don't know how my account's gonna progress without them. I guess. I then also removed all the monsters that had to be fought in a sequential order before reaching some big boss monster. There were a lot of fights like this, such as the fight caves, all of the raids, the Knight's Training Ground, the final fight of Recipe for Disaster, the Inferno, mid-quest mini-bosses, the Gauntlet, the list goes on. They happen all the time. So in these cases, there wasn't a consistent way to keep all of the monsters in the sheet without having to manually edit each time I completed one, and mark off multiple monsters completed during the same task. And I really wanted to avoid any kind of manual labor, because that's just going to kill the fun for me and for anyone else using the sheet. So I decided to only leave in the very last monster in the sequence. So for example, in the fight caves, Jad is the only monster from the fight caves to appear. And I know that when I'm assigned Jad during the Journeyman tier, that means that all of the monsters that I have to fight in order to reach Jad are automatically unlocked. So Jad unlocks the entire fight caves. The same is true with when I have to fight Galvek during Dragon Slayer 2. If I haven't unlocked any of the dragons or the Vorkath that I have to kill before Galvek, then I can kill them. However, if they are a common monster that has to be killed during the quest, like the dragons in Dragon Slayer 2, and I still don't have them unlocked, then they are not auto-unlocked. They will still be locked outside of the quest until I harvest their souls when assigned by the sheet. The third and final category were all monsters whose requirements were drastically out of line with their appropriate tier. So that would be low-level monsters in late-game areas, like the bunnies in Prith. A big one would be additional enemies that spawn during boss fights. Those all presented a big issue for the sheet. As well as the oubliette monsters, which you probably don't even know what those are, so who cares that they're not on the sheet, right? After removing all of those problem monsters that fit into one or more of the three categories, it brought me down to a total of around 700, which I then separated into 5 tiers. The tiers were all balanced around combat difficulty, quest requirements, and gear upgrades. I started with the Reaper tier as the end of the mid-game, and decided to balance the other tiers around that. So in the Reaper tier, I'm going to be grabbing stuff like the Quest Point Cape, Zulra weapons, starting some easy bossing, and the Whip, which is a really big milestone. And then the other 4 tiers were balanced with that in mind, each giving important account upgrades that also allow me to reach the next tier. So Novice is really just getting my feet wet without soft locking the account, whereas Journeyman has a lot of massive account upgrades like Barrow's Gloves, Fire Cape, Rune Crossbow, Black Mask, etc. Now, Veteran is going to contain endgame bosses and a lot of high-level Slayer monsters that are going to unlock gear crucial to completing the Master tier, and ultimately helping us grind out for that Scythe of Vitter, the ultimate goal of the account. And then I wound up adding in the 6th tier in order to prevent some early on hard locks that could happen with Slayer. To summarize all that, the account really only has one rule, and that is just to kill the monster that appears on the sheet in order to unlock it. And you really don't have to worry about any of the exceptions that I'm talking about, because I've baked them into the sheet, so that you really don't have to think about it, and you should just know that, oh, I've been assigned a monster, and there's some stuff in the way, it's okay for me to kill it. So, for example, when I get Elvarg, I can kill Melzar the Mad and all the necessary mobs in Melzar's Maze, but those monsters are still locked until I get them from the sheet. Please let me know if you've got any comments or questions, but for now, let's actually start our quest. Very simple, there we go, Chompy dead. And that means that we can now mark that soul as harvested, and we can kill all the Chompies our heart desires. However, due to rule number 3, we must finish this quest before we can harvest our next soul. So we're going to go ahead and knock out the quest, and that rule really exists just to keep things nice and easy, and me sane. And after cooking our chompy, that's quest complete. We can get our next soul, and next episode we're going to start off by killing a holy man. Should be fun. Thanks everyone for watching. This has been Ultimate Reaper.